So let's go ahead, Caitlin, if we can, and try to get started promptly at 5:35. I know it's a really big session we've bitten off today. So I don't want to wait too long. Does that seem reasonable?
We did start opening it just a couple minutes after 5:30. I don't know if 2 or 3 minutes is enough for people to get on. I had 78 people register and 21 have joined.
Okay. All right. Why don't you let me know how it's looking then, and we'll go from there. What are our numbers looking like, Caitlin?
We're at 27.
Okay, I'll give people 4 more minutes and then I'm starting. So we'll start promptly at 5:40. Okay, everyone, thanks so much for bearing with us. We are going to get started here in just a minute. Letting Caitlin get back to her desk. I had just muted so we can have a quick conversation about registries that came in late and folks that are still getting into the session. I do apologize for having to put a registry on it. We are utilizing the Mendocino Cannabis Program platform, and it is limited to 100 persons currently, and that includes Caitlin and I or whoever's in the office working on administering the webinar or the listening session or the information session, whatever that might be. So good day, everyone. Good evening, I should say. This is Kristen Nevedal. I'm the County and Mendocino Cannabis Program Manager, for those of you who haven't met me. And I'm really appreciative for folks joining us on this Wednesday evening. I know it's after work and folks are busy and probably would rather be having dinner with their family and friends or just relaxing outside. But here we are. So we're going to get through this information and do our best to try to distill it down in a manner that's not too clunky and chewy. In the future, I do expect us to be able to have a larger capacity. We are looking forward to upgrading our system, so we're just waiting for that to come through from Zoom. Once that happens, and for future sessions, we're hoping not to have to put the registration on it. But when we're limited to 100 people, as we currently are, and the last two sessions, the first session ran over 100, the second session was really close, so we couldn't borrow platforms as we had in the past. So sorting through it, and I appreciate everyone bearing with us. So protocols for engaging in this listening session. First of all, I just want to ask everyone to acknowledge everyone else who's participating in this listening session. This listening session is not a debate, and it is a time for us to all come together and bring our good intentions and bring suggestions and creative solutions. So we will make time throughout the session. We structured it very differently than the previous two informational sessions. So we're going to go through a block of information. We're going to have some discussion. We're going to go through another block of information. We're going to have some discussion. So I'm going to ask all of you to please really bear with us. We're engaging in an experimental listening session this evening as far as how it functions and flows. Just laying a few ground rules here. Time will be made for oral comments as well. So if you, in going through the information that we've provided, have a question or would like to make a comment or provide a suggestion, utilizing the Q&A feature is a really great way to do it. We are going to be tight on time. We're only going to have 5 to 15 minutes for each of the items for discussion, so it's not a lot of time. So if you can provide your comment or your question via the Q&A feature, that'd be super helpful. That'll let Caitlin kind of take issues or questions pertaining to an issue that are very similar and fold them together. Additionally, we will try to make time for oral comments. Oral comments can be made using the hand raise feature. Both the Q&A boxes and the hand raise feature should be available to you at the bottom of your screen. So if you bring your cursor down to the bottom of your screen, you should have it says Q&A with a little chat box icon. Clicking on that will open up the Q&A feature so you can type in questions or comments or suggestions. In that same area, there are some participation features, and if you click that open, one of them is a hand raise feature. If you raise your hand during a comment period and then someone else makes your comment, do feel free to lower your hand and type into the chat feature that you agree with the previous commenter and maybe give a quick subject note in there. In that comment feature, we will be printing out all of the chat features so that we have them for record to go back and review and consider as we move forward with developing policies. So let's see here. If after or during the session you have comments that perhaps are suggestions that are too big to fit into the chat feature, we do welcome additional materials, comments, suggestions emailed to cannabisprogram@mendocinocounty.org. So lots of ways to engage this evening, and we appreciate everyone bearing with us. So I did set a little bit of an agenda. I'm watching time here, and we are a little bit behind time, so I'm going to try to make it through this overview in an expedited manner. The conversation for the overview is clunky and chunky and hard to get through because it's filled with minutia, and we aren't going to talk about all of it. So just know there's more to it than what we can cover tonight. And I apologize. This should say overview of what to expect if 22.18 instead of phase 3 or phase 3 cultivation, our next permitting and application phase, has to be implemented through 10A17 due to referendum. After that, we're going to talk a little bit about continued operations when transitioning from 10A17 to 2218, should that be an option for folks. And then we'll also talk about tiered taxation on cannabis cultivation. I'm looking forward to getting suggestions on these items. We'll also have some time to discuss, about 15 minutes, to discuss tax relief when voluntarily reducing canopy size, potentially because of drought or other choices that you might be making as a farmer. And then additionally, tiered implementation of the 10% cap. This is a heavy duty topic, and it's not just talking about the implementation of the 10% cultivation tax. It's also talking about, we're going to have some time to talk about how you might limit cultivation by restructuring the ability for applicants to conduct mixed cultivation type activities. And I'll get into that more in detail when we get to that section. So let's go ahead and get ourselves started here. Okay, some abbreviations that I've used throughout, just so folks are familiar. I've abbreviated outdoor cultivation as OD for outdoor. Mixed light cultivation has been abbreviated throughout this presentation as ML. 10A17 is the cultivation ordinance that became effective on May 4th of 2017. And then it has 3 phases of cultivation application and permits within it. So phase 1 cultivation really was the cultivation permits that were and applications that were accepted in between 2017 and 2019. There were 2 windows of application acceptance between 2018 and I would say the fall of 2019. And that really is for folks who were operating prior to January 1st of 2016. 10A17 that also has a phase 2 cultivation application and permit section to it, which really acts to regulate fully enclosed mixed light cultivation and indoor cultivation on industrially zoned parcels. Phase 3 cultivation under 10A17 refers to the application process that is currently somewhat at a stay due to an urgency ordinance or a moratorium. If phase 3, the next cultivation cycle, which was slated to open in April of 2021, so just a few months ago, phase 3, if opened, would provide a pathway to apply for new cultivation pursuant to 10A17. And we'll look at kind of the zoning tables and the parameters of that in a little bit here. As I mentioned, there is a moratorium, so this phase 3 that was slated to open on in April of 2021 is not open. And ultimately, if 22.18 is passed, which is the proposed land use-based cultivation ordinance, which is scheduled for a second reading by the Board of Supervisors on June 22nd, so next Tuesday. If this passes and stays and is implementable, it will override the phase 3 cultivation application and permitting process that is written into 10A17. If 2218 for some reason passes or doesn't pass, it passes and repeals or fails to pass on the 22nd, then eventually what we'll see is this phase 3 of 10A17 implement. So already getting into some minutia and some kind of chewy content, but I think it'll become clearer as we move through these slides. Let's talk a little bit about general restrictions. We're going to do some comparison and contrast of the different ordinances. So should 10A17 of phase 3 implement, it'll have a lot of the same general restrictions as 2218. So both phase 3 of 10A17 and 2218 would prohibit any cultivation within 1,000 feet of a youth-oriented facility, school, or park. They would both prohibit outdoor and mixed light cultivation within 200 feet of any occupied legal residence on a separate parcel. They would also prohibit outdoor and mixed light cultivation with 100 feet of an occupied mobile home that is under separate ownership. And then furthermore, prohibit outdoor and mixed light cultivation within 100 feet of any adjoining legal parcel under separate ownership. I did not put indoor cultivation on either of these slides. Indoor cultivation, actually those setbacks are based on the setbacks for the building in which the indoor cultivation is located. But additionally, indoor cultivation would be subject to the prohibition of any cultivation, including indoor, within 100 feet of a youth-oriented facility, school, or park. Some additional restrictions that are put in place under 2218 that don't exist in 10A17 currently and would not be implemented should we accept applications under phase 3 of 10A17. 2218 actively prohibits the issuance of a building permit, water well permit with the exception of a test well, a septic permit, a business license, a grading permit, an encroachment permit, an occupancy permit, a timber conversion, or other entitlement for use in association with cannabis cultivation before the county has issued the discretionary permit for the cannabis cultivation. So unlike 10A17, there's very clear language in 22.18 that prohibits the county from issuing permits for development in relationship with cannabis before the cannabis cultivation itself has received its permit. So important piece to note. Additionally, under 2218, for cultivation sites that have unresolved violations related to cannabis and or cannabis development, right, the department is required to make findings that the proposed project or use will not contribute to repeated violations related to cannabis activities on the parcel, and that the cannabis activities on the parcel, if you say you have 10A17 activities and you're trying to expand under 2218, that your existing activities are in compliance with all laws, rules, and regulations pertaining to land uses, building and construction, health and safety, and other applicable provisions. Additionally, if you have any fees or violations associated with violations that are outstanding, all of those fees would have to be paid before a permit could be issued to someone under 2218. Water restrictions, some comparison on water restrictions or requirements perhaps. Now, some of 22.18 actually refers back to the language that is the performance standards in 10A17. So first of all, I'd like to just talk about no matter what happens, right, any cultivation permits issued under 10A17 or in the future under 2218 are prohibited from utilizing water that's illegally diverted from any spring, wetland, stream, creek, or river. Furthermore, cultivation sites, including nurseries, in all of these cases, are prohibited from creating erosion or resulting in contaminated runoff that could enter any stream, creek, river, or body of water. Under phase 3, of 10A17 should we have to implement that application phase. Additional water requirements are included specific to phase 3. Unless you're in agricultural zoning. So if phase 3 implements and you are utilizing surface water, you would have to conduct a watershed assessment and provide a water right. A water right is going to be required no matter what in any of these sections, simply because it is also a state requirement. If you're utilizing groundwater under phase 3 application process associated with Ordinance 10A17, groundwater would require a water availability analysis. You could also opt under 10A17's phase 3 ordinance to utilize a water provider, such as a municipal water provider, a private utility, or a community provider. Those providers could be accessed because you're on community water. They could also be accessed if those providers deliver water to the site. And in order to utilize a water provider, the applicant would have to provide the county with a will serve letter. Under 2218, there's additional water regulations that would go into place. For example, all applicants and permit holders under 2218 would only be allowed to utilize water delivery in emergency situations. So you cannot water on a regular basis by hauling water. You would have to have declared some sort of emergency situation. If you are utilizing or planning to utilize groundwater under 2218, and you will be extracting 1,500 gallons or more from groundwater per day, you would be required to conduct a hydrological study showing whether or not there's adequate water for your operations during those dry summer months and during drought conditions. Additionally, that hydrological study would need to show if the extraction will deplete hydrologically contiguous wells, so neighboring wells to your location. And third of all, the hydrological study would need to provide an opinion about your project's cumulative impacts on the aquifer. Tree removal. Tree removal is addressed in both ordinances. Currently, 2218 maintains the provisions in 10A17, which are applied to all cultivation sites, including nurseries. And really what that does is it prohibits the removal of any commercial tree species, commercial species for the coastal forest district and northern forest district, and the removal of any true oak species or tan oak species for the purpose of developing a cannabis cultivation site. That's strictly prohibited currently. That prohibition would continue. But furthermore, under 2218, the location and operation of the cannabis cultivation site is required to provide a finding that shows to the maximum extent feasible that cultivation site will avoid or minimize its impact on environmentally sensitive areas, including hillsides that exceed 15% slope, oak woodlands, and timber resources. Also, cultivation sites, all cultivation sites, and nurseries that should be or could be located on rangeland zoning districts would have to be located within the footprint of a site that has been previously tilled. So this site would have to, in order for it to have been previously tilled and have had agricultural activity, it would have already had to have been cleared. And you would have to show the tillage and the agricultural activity occurred between the dates of January 1st of 2016 and January 1st of 2020. So folks who may have engaged in speculative clearing and development of rangeland recently and looking forward to 2218 would not qualify for 2218 on rangeland. Energy sources. Cultivation of cannabis under 10A17, all cultivation under 10A17 shall rely on electrical grid or some form of alternative energy source, and indoor and mixed light cultivation operations pursuant to 10A17 are prohibited from relying on a generator as a primary source of power. But it's a little different under 2218. Under 2218, medium indoor and mixed light cultivation operations are required to use renewable energy sources. That might be Sonoma Clean Power or some form of alternative energy. Although doing this on alternative energy, I think, would be challenging, especially for indoor. Additionally, the proposed cultivation sites, they cannot rely on a generator as a power source. So 2218 really acts to reduce and eliminate generator utilization for cultivation purposes. It also eliminates the ability for the cultivators to utilize internal combustion engine water pumps. So trying to address some noise and air quality issues there. Now, let's get into kind of the meat of it. This is really hard information for me to distill down, so I apologize that it's so chewy. 10A17 phase 1 and 2 really is a ministerial process. We'll talk about that on the next slide, but just to get kind of our minds wrapped around what kind of zoning, like, right, where are these cultivation sites located and where can they be located in the future? That's the goal of this slide. So I tried to kind of break this conversation into a couple of pieces here so it'd be a little easier to digest. 10A17 under phase 1 and phase 2, mostly phase 1, because phase 2 is limited to the industrial 1, the industrial 2, and the P1 located at the bottom left-hand side of the slide. Phase 1 was allowed on RR5s. If you have a 3.5 acre minimum, you can cultivate up to 2,500 square feet of outdoor and mixed light cultivation. If you have a 5 acre parcel, you can cultivate up to 5,000 square feet of cultivation, plus have a nursery. Now, nurseries under 10A17, when they're standalone, cannot exceed 22,000 square feet. When they are in combination with a canopy, such as a cultivation site that has a flower canopy of 2,500 square feet or 5,000 square feet or 10,000 square feet, that combination of cultivation and nursery cannot exceed 22,000 square feet. Okay. Going back to phase 1, on R10 parcels, egg parcels, UR parcels, rangeland parcels, forest land parcels, and timber plan zoned parcels, TPZ parcels, 2 acre parcels are allowed up to 2,500 square feet of cultivation. 5 acre parcels are allowed up to 5,000 square feet of cultivation plus a nursery. And 10 acre parcels or larger are allowed up to 10,000 square feet of cultivation plus a nursery. And again, on the phase 2, where we have the industrial parcels engaged, there's no minimum parcel size on the industrial parcels, and they allow up to 10,000 square feet of cultivation plus a nursery. Should phase 3 of 10A17 implement, we lose some zoning. So under 10A17 of phase 3, there's no cultivation allowances in the rangeland, the forest land, or the TPZ zones. But on RR5, so a 2 acre sized RR5 could have up to 2,500 square feet of cultivation, and a 5 acre parcel could have up to 5,000 square feet of cultivation. Under an R10 egg zone parcel or UR parcel, parcels in those zonings of 2 acres could have up to 2,500 square feet of cultivation, and parcels that are 5 acres or more could have 5,000 square feet of cultivation. And once you get up to 10 acres or greater, you could have up to 10,000 square feet of cultivation plus a nursery. There are no changes in the allowances under the industrial parcels, although some of the permit types offered under phase 3 do change, and we'll talk about that on the next slide. 2218 has a very different approach to the zoning. And don't try to memorize this. We are going to repeat it when we get into the conversation about the 10% cap and how licenses might be stacked together. So this is an overview. We'll come back to it. So on RR10 parcels, I guess the first thing I should say, no RR5 in 2218, that zoning size was eliminated. RR10 parcels, a 5-acre RR10 parcel could have up to 5,000 square feet of outdoor plus 5,000 square feet of mixed light plus 5,000 square feet of indoor and a nursery. 10 acres of RR10 could have up to 10,000 square feet of outdoor, 10,000 square feet of mixed light, 5,000 square feet of indoor and a nursery. Egg parcels and ranch land parcels both have an asterisk. I'll explain that at the end of this slide. On egg parcels of 5 acres or more, you could have up to 5,000 square feet of outdoor, 5,000 square feet of mixed light, 5,000 square feet of indoor plus a nursery. When you get to 10 acres in size on an egg parcel or larger, you could have up to an acre of outdoor, 22,000 square feet of mixed light, and 5,000 square feet of indoor plus a nursery as currently structured. UR and RL parcels, size 5 acres, between 5 and 9 acres, up to 5,000 square feet of outdoor, 5,000 square feet of mixed light, 5,000 square feet of indoor plus a nursery. And then when you get to 10 acres in size on the UR and the RL parcels, you can have up to, my apologies, an acre of outdoor, 10,000 square feet of mixed light, 5,000 square feet of indoor plus a nursery. There are some changes that have been made in the structure on the Industrial 1, Industrial 2, and the P1 parcels. 5-acre size I1, I2, and P1 parcels allow for 5,000 square feet of mixed light and 5,000 square feet of indoor plus a nursery. And 10-acre parcels under these categories would allow for up to 22,000 square feet of mixed light plus 22,000 square feet of indoor and a nursery. Now, the asterisk that's noted next to the AG parcels and the RL parcels really would allow you to expand the outdoor cultivation under specific circumstances up to 10% of the square footage or the acreage of that parcel. But again, you would have to meet all setbacks, findings, and other restrictions. So let's talk about permit types really quick, and then we'll be able to go to some conversation. We're only a few minutes behind, and I think this is the last slide before we move on to some conversation. 10A17 permit types for both phase 1 and phase 2 are listed here, and we'll talk about them briefly. So most of 10A17, especially phase 1, really is zoning clearance permit types. Zoning clearances are ministerial permits, and I didn't put a lot in here about the difference between ministerial and discretionary. I probably should have, but again, feeling a little struggling with how to get through all of this information. So zoning clearances under phase 1 were issued in the RR5 zoning to outdoor and mixed light cultivation of no more than 5,000 square feet. And that could be individually outdoor up to 5,000 or mixed light up to 5,000 or a combination of mixed light and outdoor not to exceed 5,000 square feet. In the RR10, the egg zoning, the UR and the RL, outdoor and mixed light cultivation could have been issued for up to 10,000 square feet, plus a nursery, right, under a ministerial permit. And then in the forest land and the timber production zones, outdoor and mixed light of up to 2,500 square feet was issued or allowed to be applied for under a ministerial permit. In the phase 2, for enclosed mixed light and indoor, and in some cases outdoor, in the industrial 1, industrial 2, and the P1 zones, there has been allowances for up to 10,000 square feet plus a nursery with a zoning clearance or ministerial permit. The P1 zone limited the outdoor to 5,000 square feet. So there are some limitations on the outdoor specifically in P1. Some administrative permits have been required under 10A17 phase 1 in the RR5 zone, RR10, AG, UR, RL, FL, and TPZ. Administrative permits are required for indoor of up to 500 square feet. So indoor in those zones does require an administrative permit. In the forest land and the timber production zones, outdoor and mixed light of up to 10,000 square feet with the addition of a nursery does require administrative permits. And then indoor greater than 5,001 square feet, not to exceed 2,500 square feet, requires a minor use permit and can be located in RR5, RR1, AG, UR, RL, FL, and TPC. Now, if we implement phase 3 under 10A17, some of this changes. RR5 would still be a zoning clearance or a ministerial permit for outdoor and mixed light not to exceed 5,000 square feet. RR10, egg properties and UR properties would allow for outdoor and mixed light of up to 10,000 square feet plus a nursery under a ministerial permit. And the industrial 1, industrial 2, and P1 zonings would allow for outdoor mixed light and indoor not to exceed 10,000 square feet plus a nursery. And a note that the P1 is limited to 5,000 square feet under that ministerial permit. Administrative permits, again, really for indoor in both cases. So administrative permits are issued or required, would be required in the RR5, RR10, AG, and UR zones for any indoor operations up to 500 square feet. And then if you exceeded 500 square feet, not to go beyond 2,500 square feet, it would require or trigger a minor use permit in the R5. I'm sorry, this should say RR10, not RR1, my mistake, and the AG zones. Now, under 10A7 or 2218, there are no zoning clearances or ministerial permits. Everything is discretionary. So administrative permits, minor use permits, and major use permits are discretionary. A difference that I think is really important to know between the administrative permits listed in phase 3 and the administrative permits listed in 2218 is that 2218 actually elevates the components of the ministerial or the administrative permit so that they are analogous to minor use permits in their actions. So discretionary permits under 2218 do all require a public notification. They do require a hearing. So administrative permits and minor use permits are heard with the zoning administrator. Major use permits are heard with the planning commission. Those public hearings have to be noticed. They are noticed to the property owners, the contiguous property owners, or any property owner within 300 feet of the boundary of the parcel where the project will be located. If the project is located on a private road, any parcel that has frontage on that private road would also be notified. They require a public notification, so the hearing is noted to the public in print media. So it does all of 2218. My apologies, we skipped a slide. I'm going backwards here. Okay, there we go. Sorry. All of 2218 does include a public process component. The administrative permits under phase 3 do not include that. They have not been elevated to the same levels here. Although the minor use permit would. So some of these indoor permits would require some notification. They would be heard by the zoning administrator. None of the outdoor or mixed light permits would, however, have that sort of same notification process. Administrative permits would be issued under 2218 on RR10s, ag lands, UR lands, and range lands, but be limited to 2,500 square feet of outdoor and mixed light cultivation and up to 500 square feet of indoor. Administrative permits would be issued on I-2, I-1, and P1 zonings, and limit the cultivation to 22,000 square feet of indoor and mixed light plus nursery. Once you get above 2,500 square feet in the UR zone, you trigger a minor use permit, and then you can have 2,500 to 5,000 square feet of outdoor and mixed light, and up to 5,000 square feet between 2,501 and 5,000 square feet of indoor. Major use permits are required for the vast majority of the larger cultivation under this proposal. So in R10, anything between 501 and 5,000 square feet of indoor would trigger a major use permit. Anything between 5,001 and 10,000 square feet of outdoor and or mixed light would trigger a major use permit, and nurseries trigger major use permits under this ordinance. Once you get over 5,000 square feet of outdoor or mixed light, or you want a nursery, you trigger a major use. Rangeland, once you get over 501 square feet of indoor, you trigger a major use. You get over 2,500 square feet of mixed light or outdoor, and you trigger a major use. Nurseries also trigger a major use. On ag lands, once you get over 10,000 square feet of outdoor or mixed light or ask for a nursery, you're going to trigger a major use permit. So that's a brief overview. And so I believe that I had planned just a few minutes for Q&A. We're at 6:15, so we are running about 15 minutes behind. I think what we should do is look at this next item, and then I think we should take combined Q&A for about 15 minutes to try to get ourselves back on track here, and talk about the continuation of operations under 10A17. If someone needs to transfer over into 2218, how do we keep folks who are operating under 10A17 operational under 22.18? Applicants that qualify to transfer over into 2218 really would have to meet the eligibility requirements. So phase one applicants who applied for phase one permits under chapter 10A17 may apply for land use permits if they're in good standing, essentially. In good standing, I'm going to explain here in a moment. And the reason why applicants may want to transfer over really is if they're going to have a hard time making it through phase one and show less than significant impacts. So they may want to transfer over to 10A17 or to 2218, too many numbers, my apologies, so that we can condition that permit. Or they may want to transfer over because the discretionary permit process meets the state's requirements for project-specific CEQA analysis and may provide a streamlined pathway for transitioning from provisional to annual. So a couple things going on there. In order to qualify for that transfer over, you'd have to meet, again, the eligibility requirements. So you could transfer over and maintain your zoning so long as you aren't expanding beyond 10,000 square feet and you're not in a district that's subject to a sunset or other restrictions that are timed as set forth in some aspects of 10A17. You would also have to have not been denied under 10A17 for any of the following reasons. So you can't transfer over as a phase one applicant from 10A17 into 2218 if we denied you for a tree removal violation, for failure to pass a background check, or lack of proof of prior cultivation, or if your legal parcel was established after January 1st of 2016, or if we denied you for non-responsiveness to requests for information from the county. So good point to bring up that we have the portal coming up. The portal is really moving along nicely. It's going to be much more user-friendly than I had hoped. Big up to the IS team working on it. It's really quite nice. I'm excited. But we are looking forward to opening that portal in mid-July. So stay tuned. We'll be providing more information about what complete applications look like. But I want everyone to be really clear that if you do not provide a complete application during the 90 days that portal is open, so July through October sometime, and are denied, you will not be able to transfer into 2218 as a 10A17 applicant and maintain operations. So, again, we'll talk more about that, but not right at this moment. I do think we can take just a few minutes for Q&A on this and some discussion. And so I do want to limit it to about 10 minutes because I got to get us back on track with timing here, and we're really crunchy for time. So I'm wondering if we can check in with Caitlin and see if there's questions and or suggestions that are of note in the comments. And then we'll run through that very, very quick. If folks want to make a brief comment, a brief oral comment, I would suggest that you raise your hand. We tried to get a count on how many folks want to comment on this section before we move into the next couple items. And so we do have additional material to get through. So Caitlin, I'm going to ask you for some feedback. Can you give me some idea as to what we have in the Q&A versus how many hands we have raised so we can see how to best move through some discussion on these items that we've presented thus far?
We currently have a couple of items related to hydrology and water.
Okay.
In general. Let's see, there's an item on renewable energy and some specific questions related to sizing of parcels and changes between phase 1 and phase 3, admin permits, ag land major use permits, agricultural activity, and we have one hand raised.
Okay, so let's take just a couple minutes on each of these items, and then we'll go to the individual who has their hand raised. So why don't you ask a couple questions, Caitlin, about the water and the hydrology, or let us know what comments have come in thus far.
So previously when we were on this slide that discussed 1,500 gallons a day, the question is whether that 1,500 gallons per day is on average over the year.
No, it's on any given day, I would say. I mean, I think that is, there will be a requirement to put together a water table. So if you're using your water over the summer, you can't say, oh, but I'm going to take all of the water I use over the summer, I'm going to combine it, I'm going to divide it by 365 days, and then get my water use per day. It's your water use in the propagation cycle. What does that look like on a daily rate versus what it looks like in a vegetative cycle versus what it might look like in the flower cycle? If in any of those cycles you're going to go over 1,500, you're going to hit 1,500 gallons a day or go over, it will trigger a hydrology study. So, sorry, I'm going to multitask here and see if I can't get my screens back sorted. Okay, Caitlin, let's do another question while I mess with, there we go, while I mess with my slideshow. Okay.
All right.
Next
The
hydrological
next
question.
question is, how would a hydrological study on one site be able to determine the impact on surrounding wells? I do believe that it's a hydrogeological study that's required.
So, yeah, there is a process determined by environmental health that is currently used in a multitude of settings. And so basically they look at well levels. They pump down the test well on the parcel site and watch the well levels of neighboring sites to see what happens when they start drawing water from the project site. And I might not be explaining it with as much detail as is warranted, but that's essentially kind of the basis of that program. So I hope that helps. You would have to work with neighbors, notify neighbors who have wells, and then you watch the water levels and the flow rates of the neighboring wells as you pump down the test well. Next question.
There was a question regarding board direction towards removing the requirement for renewable energy and aligning with state law.
I do remember that. This is what was in the version that I had, and it could be also that some of the other smaller sized cultivation for mixed light and indoor aligns with that. But we can come back to looking at that for sure. And next question.
The next question asks if industrial properties under 5 acres cannot enter the program under 2218.
Let me try to pull up my master zoning table. I have a better one here. Caitlin, let's come back to the answer while I get this zoning table loaded on my laptop. So I'll come back to the industrial parcel question in just a moment. What's the next question?
There was a comment that previously tilled agricultural activity is accepted with evidence from January 1, 2000 to January 1, 2016. And that was just a comment.
Yes, that is true. On rangeland. So that is a requirement associated with cultivation activities on rangeland. So on the zoning table, industrial parcels of 5 acres are not included, except for when you get up to 2,500 square feet of mixed light would be allowed on 5 acres, and up to 500 square feet of indoor with APs. And then it looks like I missed that you could also on 5 acres or more have specialty indoor. But anything below 5 acres does not appear to be included in the zoning table. And I don't see, there are some footnotes here. So let me look at footnote 2 and 5. Footnote 2. Footnote 2 is kind of hokey. It depends on the size. You could go down to 3.5 acres in industrial lands if you're surrounded by parcels that are 5 acres or larger. Yeah, so industrial lands are pretty limited. Oh, footnote 4, parcels in industrial zones are not subject to a minimum parcel area. So there's the answer to, it's hard to get all the footnotes into these notes here, but yes, there is a footnote that exempts industrial 1, industrial 2, and P1 from minimum parcel sizes. So my apologies for not baking that into this slide. Good catch. And then next question, Caitlin.
The The next question is how to know if they're going to have a hard time making it through phase one.
Oh gosh, what's up with the slideshow? We're gonna communicate with you. And so as we're conducting our review of your application, we're gonna let you know if things start showing up, potentially because of sensitive species habitat review or AQND. Right now, we're just communicating with the applicant and trying to figure out how to move folks forward. So we aren't in a state of immediate denial for folks who look like they're going to struggle through 10A17, because we're hopeful that 2218 will be a pathway for us to work with them to adjust their project to make sure that they can meet the less than significant impacts. So we will work with you on a case-by-case basis currently. And then I think we should, if that's it for the questions that were in the chat, Caitlin, should we go to the caller?
Yes, we can go to the caller. More questions came in after we started, so. Okay,
we're gonna have to see if we can capture those at the end.
Right.
My apologies, we're gonna have to kind of move on here pretty soon.
The individual with their hand raised is Corinne Powell, and I am going to allow her to speak now. It may take her a moment to connect.
Okay.
Hi, thank you. I'm curious to know if a person permitted under phase one must convert to a use permit of some kind. I know that the conversion has been discussed under administrative permits primarily, and I don't see that written here in any particular way. But if a phase one permittee is converted to whatever the license type would be under 2218, do they have the same access to multiple growing styles as anyone coming into 2218 would have, i.e. 10,000 square feet of outdoor, 10,000 square feet of mixed light, and some allotment of indoor?
Yeah, I think I can help clear that up for you, Corinne. Thanks for the question. So if you transfer as a 10A17 applicant into 2218 and you stay within the parameters of what's allowed under 10A17, so you don't exceed the 10,000 square feet of mixed type cultivation canopy, right? And that's really based on your parcel size as well. So if you don't exceed the parameters of what's allowed under 10A17 for your parcel size, then you can move into 2218 and transition into an administrative permit. If you move into from 10A17 into 2218 and you expand beyond what is allowed for your parcel size and type under 10A17, then you become subject to the zoning table in 2218. So I hope that helps. Again, if you transition from 10A17 into 2218 and maintain compliance with the zoning table and the zoning requirements under 10A17, it's an administrative permit, and you can, even if your parcel size and type isn't allowed under 2218, there's a grandfathering as long as you don't expand beyond what's allowed for your parcel under 1017. So I hope that answers your question.
Kind of, thank you. I think I'll have to address it again when I see more guidelines into this transition period, because quite frankly, I don't understand what we are to do. As soon as we have the opportunity to present our applications, I think a lot of us are still looking for the instructions for that process and or the guidelines.
Right.
So I hope that they will be available soon.
So applications for 22.18, there is a clause in 22.18. There's two pieces that I think are really important to mention here before we move on to the rest of our presentation. First of all, there's an early processing window for applicants that are transitioning from 10A17 to 2218. And then second of all, staff has the ability to state or express to the public when they will open 2218 applications for new cultivation. We are not obligated to open new applications for new cultivation under 2218 as soon as the ordinance implements. As a matter of fact, we've been talking about delaying accepting applications for new cultivation under 2218. And so as long as we notify the public about when we might open that window to receive applications for new cultivation under 2218, we can do that. And so we can say when we're going to open it, we can say when we're going to close it. We could say we're going to open it until we receive 10 applications. So we are not actively focused on developing the application criteria for 2218. We are currently in the program more focused on ensuring we can adequately and swiftly process 10A17 applicants that have come in under phase one and get them over the finish line into annual licenses. So that is our priority here in the department. And if you're in that 10A17 category, more information will come. And as I mentioned, we will be working with people on a case-by-case basis to assess their needs for success to an annual license and make sure that we help provide a pathway for them to get there to the best of our ability. So I'm going to move on because we're slow on time here. Let's see if we can get through our taxation discussions and maybe we'll couple these together. So we have two taxation discussions coming up, and they're going to come up probably not as quickly as the next item, which is talking about caps and permit stacking for 2218. But I think it's important to know that some of the discussion is quite timely. We have been talking about tiered taxation. So is there a way for the county to consider providing tax relief to smaller farmers and then increasing or having the larger farmers pick up more of the tax burden? This conversation here also helps to frame some of the square footage taxes. So I just copied this out of code quickly. Up to 5,000 square feet of cultivation has a minimum tax of $2,500, where over 5,000 square feet of cultivation has a minimum tax of $5,000 per calendar year. This is important as we're also considering and wanting to have discussion not just on tiering taxes, but how someone might be able to have tax relief provided to them if they are reducing their square footage. Maybe because of drought conditions, they're worried about having enough water for the season, or potentially for other reasons. Currently, we have an appeal process. We have allowed folks in the past and this year to under certain circumstances, notify us that they have reduced their square footage and then adjusted the tax via the appeal process for that reduced square footage. The appeal process is arduous. It's challenging. It's challenging for us to verify. What I would like to consider and see if we can have some discussion around is there a way to create a pre-notification process? It's a little bit challenging because of the tax cycle starting on the first of the year. But Humboldt County, for example, opens up a window before planting in the late winter, early spring, where there's a form made available that cultivators can say, I'm reducing my cultivation size from 10,000 feet to 7,500 feet because of A, B, and C, or X, Y, and Z. And then it reduces their tax liability because of filing that form, which is essentially an affidavit. So I think we should pause here for just a couple of minutes. Let's see if we can do a 5-minute brainstorm and see if we can get some ideas about taxes and potentially how to tier them and what might be a meaningful way to enact tax reduction for voluntarily reducing your square footage. Caitlin, I'm going to kick it back over to you and see what we have as far as hands for this topic and what we might have in the chat. So can you give me a little overview so we can see what kind of timing we have here?
Currently, we only have one question and a comment related to the tax item and no hands raised.
Okay, well, let's hear both the comment and the question if we can. And then I think the next topic is really, a lot of folks want to talk about the next topic. So please, why don't you give us the comment and the question?
So the question first, the new tax, they're asking if it's on top of the 0.025% tax that's paid currently.
No, I think what they're talking about, well, it might be. I mean, I think this is, we're having conversation about what the policy might look like. So is there a way to increase the tax for larger cultivation sites, and at what would quantify as a larger cultivation site that might be subject to a greater than 2.5% tax versus a smaller cultivation site that might be able to have a reprieve from that tax of some level. So if we don't get to a lot of ideas about this today, I think we can come back to it. I think there's more time to come back to this conversation, frankly, than some of the other items that are part of this listening session. So, we're looking for ideas on this one for sure. Caitlin, is there another question or a comment?
There is a comment that the participant believes the affidavit is a great idea in relation to the taxes as in Humboldt County. And another question came in asking if the discussion about taxes is going to include switching to gross receipts or expanding appeals for crop loss. I can't speak to expanding appeals for crop loss, simply because that doesn't, in my recollection, seem to have been part of the direction from the board. Really, there's been a desire expressed to try to reduce the tax burden for smaller cultivators, but then not lose revenue. So the way to do that would be to consider increasing taxes on larger production sites. What was the second part of that question, Caitlin? I'm sorry. I got stuck on the crop loss, but I know there was 2 parts to that question. It was if the discussion was going to include switching to gross receipts or expanding it.
Yeah, currently it is a gross receipts tax, but there's a minimum threshold on it. So the gross receipts component is self-reporting. So I imagine most folks pay the minimum tax threshold. I don't know if that happens across the board, but it is a self-reporting gross receipts tax that has a minimum threshold based on the size of your cultivation. So I don't think we're looking to switch that currently. That was not part of board direction. Okay, are there any hands raised on this topic? We are almost back on time to move into the last topic.
No hands currently raised.
All right, let's do this next topic then. Okay, so concepts for limiting permit stacking. I really want to talk about this item first. So there were 2 components from the board as far as direction provided to staff. One component was how multiple types of cultivation might be allowed in a cumulative manner So, for example, in RR10 zone, where you have 5 acres, between 5 and 10 acres, you could have up to 5,000 square feet of outdoor coupled with 5,000 square feet of mixed light plus 5,000 square feet of indoor for a total of 15,000 square feet of canopy, and then a nursery, right? All under one license or one discretionary permit is what I should say. So this is consistent kind of throughout 2218 on the parcels in the different zonings, that you can cumulatively combine the square footage of the different types of permits allowed under your zoning table. The board has requested that we bring back some concepts for limiting permit stacking. And kind of one of the simplest concepts, I think, to look at and consider here is looking at how 10A17 is structured. So 10A17 would allow someone to conduct some, mixed light and some outdoor in appropriately zoned locations that doesn't exceed 10,000 square feet, for example. So one of the questions that we've been kind of kicking around and concepts we've been looking at is, would it make more sense to allow someone, say, on an RR10 parcel of between 5 and 9 plus acres, right, not quite 10 acres, to maximize or to only have 5,000 square feet of cultivation, but have multiple different types. So not to exceed 5,000 square feet, but you can do some portion or all of that in outdoor. You can do some portion of that in outdoor and mixed light, and in indoor. Nurseries also aren't limited in size under 22.18. So really, I wanted to bring this forward for consideration. Again, there's asterisks next to the egg parcel and the rangeland parcel types, simply because on parcels of 10 acres or larger, there is the opportunity to increase your cultivation beyond what we're talking about in relationship to permit stacking, to allow up to 10% of your parcel size for outdoor if you can meet all the setbacks and the findings and the water requirements and the slopes, and on rangeland it's a previously tilled area that has been under agricultural production, and you're not cutting down trees, etc. So I think we should probably couple these concepts together, because first of all, how permit stacking might be addressed through an ordinance amendment, I think is really going to change the initial square footage on really RR10s, URs, and on the industrial parcels, and then also impact the square footage of multi-use activities in agricultural and rangeland parcels. So I'd love to talk about permit stacking, and then also hear some concepts about how the 10% allowance for outdoor might be phased in. We've been talking about some different types of triggers that might be considered for allowing someone to exceed their stacked allowance, so to speak. And then what would those triggers look like? So one thought is that no one could exceed their mixed use square footage with outdoor on rangeland and eggland until there was a clear determination that the county was out of drought conditions, right? So that's an example of one environmental trigger. Now, just food for thought. But also, there has been conversation about, should we just limit the amount of outdoor under this 10% to 1 acre, not to exceed 10%, right? Whichever's smallest, for 2 years, and then move to 2 acres for a period of time. So I think there's a lot of different ways to skin this cat, so to speak. And I really look forward to hearing some insights from folks on this call. We have 12 minutes. It does look like we had some additional Q&A come in. If folks wanted to make oral comments, you could also raise your hands. Caitlin, what do we have in the Q&A for this topic? And then could you also let us know how many hands might be raised so we can plan our time wisely?
Of course. The first question is if we can mix types of growing, as in outdoor and mixed light, will we be required to get an additional license from CDFA to do a hybrid approach?
My apologies for the slideshow moment here. It was a little tricky in this format. So yes, under 2218, you would be able to mix the types of cultivation you are conducting so long as each of those types are allowed on the parcel type and size that you're on. And then under the state's licensing requirements, you would have to get a separate license for each type of cultivation you're conducting. So if you have some outdoor, some mixed light, and some indoor, you would have to have a minimum of 3 licenses at the state, one for whatever appropriate size of outdoor, one to cover that mixed light, and then another one to cover the indoor activities. So one use permit at the county, but multiple licenses at the state under that situation. Next question. Caitlin?
I was reading the question, but I'm trying to understand the meaning of it. It says under 10A17, the mix and match up to the total limit of the acreage and zoning allowed to add in nursery. Would this concept proposed allow for adding a nursery?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. If a nursery is allowed on the size of parcel you have. So not all parcel sizes under 2218 allow for a nursery. Nursery clearly is meant for commercial activities. It's not for your own in-house propagation. It's really under 2218, we're really considering of the commercial aspects of a nursery and assuming that folks would be selling their propagated materials to other licensed cultivators and aspects of the supply chain. So looking at that nursery permit as a commercial activity under this framework. But anywhere a nursery is allowed and the cultivation types that you're seeking are allowed, you would be able to couple those uses. And then it would literally, if say the nursery is a major use, which I believe it is in all of the zoning, in all of the zonings under 2218, if your, say, outdoor was an administrative permit and your mixed light was a minor use, but your nursery was a major use, you would have to file for a major use permit to conduct that mixed use. So basically, when mixing uses, the highest level of discretionary permit is what you would apply for. So I hope that that helps and provides a little bit of clarity. Next question.
Isn't there no new cultivation at all until after the drought?
Well, it's likely in timing, but we don't know how long the drought will last. So as I mentioned before, we are not planning on accepting applications for new cultivation under 2218 anytime soon. Where our focus really is managing the backlog that we have currently with applicants that came in under phase 1 of 10A17. So if 2218 stays on the books, passes, first of all passes, and then is not repealed, staff will determine when we're going to accept applications and for how long or how many we'll be accepting, and be publishing that timeline. If 2218 passes or fails to pass, but if it passes and then is repealed, we don't have the same ability to schedule new cultivation under phase 3 of 10A17. Essentially, once the moratorium ends and it's already been renewed, so it doesn't have we don't have an unlimited ability to extend a moratorium under phase 3 of 10A17. So once that moratorium ends, we would be forced under the current statute to accept applications. So, I think that we could really look at doing some timing around larger cultivation under 2218 and tying that to the end of drought, making sure that there's no drought present, or that we aren't in a state of drought for folks to be able to scale up. But a lot of the conversation around drought, the current drought, really has to do with the timing of applications as we currently see them under 2218. So it's not just accepting the applications. Discretionary permits do take, when all hands are on deck and everything is moving smoothly, around 9 months minimum to process. When you get a backlog, you end up taking some years to process discretionary permits, as they do need to be noticed. There's a lot of review. There's also a referral process where those applications, once completed, go out to other agencies for their input. So they do take quite a while to just process. Even the most well put together and complete applications take quite a while to process under the discretionary permit structure. So we won't see new cultivation this year. I can tell you that much. And if we don't accept applications until early in 2022, it's highly unlikely we would see new cultivation in 2022 under 2218. So just a little timeline background there. Keelan, do you have another question? And do we have hands raised?
We do have one hand raised.
Okay, let's hold on that. We have more questions in the chat. We still are pretty good on time.
The most recent comment was regarding the acreage cap, and that they feel it would be a good start with a 1 or 2 acre cap per the recommendation of the Planning Commission, and to do an EIR for any expansion beyond that, and to set a data-driven baseline for applicants to tier off of.
Okay. Noted. If we looked at limiting the ability to permit stack, that would create a 1 acre cap, essentially, on before moving into that 10%. So it might make sense to consider how mixed use occurs, and that would create kind of a natural threshold of the maximum of 1 acre of combined canopy for cultivation sites, not nurseries not included, but for actual flower production. And then we would have to look further into how to tier the 10%, but just an FYI there. So Caitlin, I think we should probably go to the caller if we could.
The caller has lowered their hand.
Oh, alrighty then. Do we have additional questions in the Q&A feature, in the chat feature?
We do. Can't water emergency be another basis to do a new urgency ordinance to delay phase 3 under 10A17, separate from the current moratorium?
I think that that's probably possible, right? So I think if there's a state of emergency, you could probably do an urgency ordinance to actually essentially create a stay, so to speak, on an application process because of emergency declaration that's in place due to drought conditions. But that's a kind of a chewy legal question. But we have had some discussion about how urgency ordinances might be utilized to kind of manage development under drought conditions, for example. So it's probably possible, yes.
Okay. Do you want me to go back to the top of the list of questions?
Sure. If we've got additional questions that we didn't answer earlier that came in, we can try to answer some of those. And you had said questions came in during the first discussion period, and then we moved on because we ran out of time. If you want to pick up a couple of those, we could try to do that quickly.
What about the phase 1 to phase 3 or phase 1 to 2218 pathway? Is TPZ allowed?
TPZ is allowed only if the applicant in 10A17 who's transitioning to 2218 maintains compliance with the zoning requirements set forth for their TPZ parcel. So set forth under 10A17. So whatever limitations are on your TPC parcel under 10A17, you would be subject to those same limitations under 2218. They would not change.
For ag land major use permits, is it correct that 10 acres or more would allow 22,000 square foot mixed light plus a nursery of 12,000 square feet plus an acre of outdoor?
Currently, as the zoning table is structured, yes. This is why we're talking about stacking permits and whether or not it should defer to the largest square footage of permit allowed. And then just a note, the nursery permits under 2218 do not have a square footage cap and are being viewed as commercial nurseries that will be providing licensed materials to other licensees. Caitlin, if we can take one more question and then we should probably call it done.
Okay. If you go through the phase 1 to to 2218 pathway, does this mean property line setbacks change from 50 feet to 100 feet?
I think that's a good question. If you change your license type or you expand to 10,000 square feet, it would definitely trigger that 50 to 100 square feet or 50 to 100 foot setback. I don't know the answer to that if you keep everything the same. The setback question has been a tough one, and I have not asked for a legal interpretation on this level, but I think it does warrant asking. I imagine that because you're applying for a new permit, it's likely to trigger that 100-foot setback, but I don't know for sure. So I would have to ask for confirmation from legal on that. Okay, we're at 7:02, so I think we should go ahead and adjourn this evening's listening session. I really appreciate all the questions, the comments, the input. Again, if you have additional suggestions and you want to email those, you can email those to cannabisprogram@mendocinocounty.org. And also a big thank you to Caitlin for staying late on her Wednesday evening to help facilitate this listening session, and all of you for joining us. So I hope you all have a good evening, and we will come back with some more information very soon. Caitlin, I think we can go ahead and end the webinar.